Hi there, welcome to Colors. I'm Erica. On today's video, I'm going to be doing a color along in Lulu's House of Wonder. This was the page I picked up for September, but I didn't get to it, so I'm just gonna do it now. So this was the page, and I love this sunflower page. I think it's so cute. I know it's more towards the, late summer theme wise, but I think I can pull it off to have it be a really beautiful, still fall color palette. With lots of yellows and warm browns. I do like these greens that are in here as well. And this peachy color I think is really cute too. So I'm going to incorporate all of those colors and try to just make this cute. So yeah, I'm going to use my Inktense pencils to start. So I've got these guys here. And I haven't used my Inktense in a little while, so this might be a little bit of a learning curve. But like I normally do, I'm going to start with the background. I am going to do a light yellow background. I know the flowers are all going to be, this is going to be a lot of yellow on this page, but I think it's going to be fun. So I'm going to start with this Sicilian yellow. And this is just like a really pale yellow color. And I'm going to do kind of an abstract background similar to what I did on my last page in this book. So I'm just going to add some color around, and then I'm going to come in with my water brush here in a little bit and just kind of move that color all over the place, let it kind of go where it wants to go. Yeah, and just try to give it a nice, fun background. Okay. Yeah, I just want the stalks out here. I don't want to add too much more behind, I don't think. I can always come in with some pencils if I decide to add more, but I was thinking like, because there's so much green in the background of this, I was thinking about doing something similar to that, but I don't want to have as much green as in those pictures. Although the green looks nice, I want this to be definitely more of a fall color palette. So we're going to start with this yellow and see what happens. Okay, I'm going to finish adding this color, and then when I come back, we will activate that. All right, so I'm using this Arteza push brush, or push button water brush, and I'm just going to blend out that color kind of in really random odd shapes the best I can. Trying not to keep any lines too straight. Now, this is not a brush that I normally work with, so I'm not sure how this is going to work, but I'm going to do my best. I feel like it needs, ooh, that was too much water. Sometimes with these water brushes, you do kind of get a little more water than what you bargain for, but just kind of have to play around with them a little bit. And since this is single-sided, I'm not overly worried about, bleed through or anything like that. So we can play around. And I am kind of making a mess. I'm going over the tips of some of the flowers because I know that when I color those are going to be a little bit darker than the background. So I'm not worried about, getting that yellow color on more yellow flowers. It's going to be covered up. So we can be messy in the background and just kind of have fun with it. All right, so there's the first layer. Like I said, it's really light. This over here looks a little too straight for me, so I'm going to grab a little bit of color and just blend some color out into the white there. There we go. Okay. Do a little bit of that over here too. Ooh, that's real dark. Sometimes that's the fun in the water mediums though too, is that you just you don't always know what you're gonna get, and sometimes it surprises you and you're just like, oh, well, I guess that does kind of work. That's not really what I was going for, but sure. Okay. Yeah, I want a little bit more out here, I think. All right, and then I will be adding some splatters. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that, because then I should be able to cover up some things. I just don't want any on the characters themselves, so I'm going to try to cover them up as best I can, but I'm going to use a mixture of this yellow color, I think maybe some browns. Yeah, so I've got that tan, and I think maybe like the baked earth would be a good one. So we'll try those. And to do that, I'm getting out my Caran d'Ache palette, but you don't have to use this. Anything with a like a little bit of a textured surface will work. And so I'm just going to scribble some color onto the board here. And then I'm going to use a paintbrush and water. I'm going to start with this one. So I'm going to get quite a bit of water in there and make sure that my brush is pretty wet. And then I'm going to come in and just start sprinkling things on, trying to keep it away from the faces of my little characters there. Okay, so that is mostly dry, and I'm using a fan brush now with a lot of water in it. So these are going to be, depends on how this splatters. Sometimes it splatters a lot, sometimes it splatters a little, but either way, I'm going to make a little bit of a mess on my surrounding mat. There we go. Pretty well protected so far. I'm pleased with my not completely messing up the the characters there. Okay, that works there. All right, I'm going to do the same with the darker brown color too. It's kind of a yellowy brown. Okay, and we'll just try to do a few of those around. All right, I'm going to let that dry, and then we will move on to the next step. Okay, next up is I'm going to take the leaf green here, and we're going to do just a messy ground underneath all of the characters. And then blend that out with the brush. Okay, next we're going to use some colors to do some clothing here. So I'm going to use the Sienna Gold on her outfit. So I'm going to try to avoid the hearts the best I can. So that's going to be a little tricky when I'm coming back in with my water brush. So I might not show you guys all of that. But yeah, so I'm just going to add the color in all around the hearts and then activate that. And then when I come back, we will move on to the next character. I'm not doing all of the page with the Inktense. I'm going to add in some alcohol markers here in a minute, but I just wanted to play with my Inktense today, so that's why I added them into the page here. Okay, yeah, so I'm going to activate this. I'll be right back with you. Okay, I'm going to use this red oxide to do this little character's outfit over here. I'm using this really lightly because this is a pretty dark color, but I wanted to have this color on the page as well. Now, I know it's not in the original illustration, but I think it'll be a good look. Okay, for the little duck over here, I am going to color that the mustard color that is in this Inktense set. And then on her hat, I'm going to use this tan color. That does look a lot more like the same colors over and over, but I promise there are 3 different colors on the page already. And then the other thing that I thought I would do is, what was the other thing? I was going to color his little coat over here, and I'm going to give him a green coat. And it's going to be this light olive color. Oh, I guess it's not a coat. He's got on overalls and a bag. I thought that was a coat there. Never mind. He's going to stay how he is. We're just going to leave him for a minute. I think his overalls will probably end up being a brown color. But for now, I think we're going to switch to alcohol markers, let this stuff dry, and then we'll get started on the alcohol marker work. Okay, so I've got everything dry on here. I just have one little bit left to do, and then we'll start on some alcohol marker work. This little red panda back in the corner here, I'm using the Baked Earth from my Inktense. I'm just going to go ahead and give that a quick coat of color, and then we can move on to the alcohol marker work. All right, and then so I'll just activate that real quick, and then we will move on to the next step. Okay, I do have quite a few markers here on the side. So I have an idea for most of the things that I want to do. So I'm going to zoom in a little closer. We're going to work on a little bit of this down here, and then we'll come up and do some alcohol marker work on the flowers. So let me zoom you in. All right, so on Lulu here. So I think my Lulus are all going to be different colors on every page because I love the look of the same character throughout the book, but it would drive me crazy trying to color it that way. So I'm going to do different characters. E220 is the color I'm going to use for Lulu's skin here. Okay, so that is Lulu's skin done. And then her hair is going to be this YR10 color. Well, it doesn't matter where I put it because you can't see it. I was trying to put the lid up so that you guys could see it. But yeah, so I am just going through right now with a base layer. And then I will be coming back in with pencils to add shading and stuff to this. So for right now, I'm not super worried about that part of it yet. So we're just gonna do a solid color straight across, and then I'll add in my shadows and highlights and stuff with my pencils. Okay, for these little bunnies down here, I'm going to use Y120. Let's work on some of the greenery. I think that'll be a good next step. So I've got 3 different greens here. I have, well, you're not gonna be able to see it. I'm gonna have to read them to you. I have G60, which is celery yellow, GY5, which is absinthe, and GY8, which is Petite Pulse. I don't know what that is, but that's what it says on the marker. And they're all Ohuhu markers. I'm going to start with this celery yellow, which is a very light green compared to the other 2. So we're just going to start with that one. And I'm going to do that on these bigger leaves down here. For these smaller leaves over here, I'm going to use GY5. Okay, now for the stems, oh, you know what? I wonder if there's a spot right here in between this stem and the leg, and I don't know if it's bunny or if it's background. We will have to, I don't know, make a snap judgment call on that. I'm going to say it's bunny, even though the little fluffy bits aren't extended, but we can fix that. So I have a marker here that I can just draw, like continue that little line so it looks like the rabbit continues over that way. I think that works. Okay, okay, leaves up towards the top here. So we're going to work on some of these leaves through here, and this is going to be the same thing that I'm going to do on all of the leaves. So I'm going to start with a layer of this G60, G060. And then we're gonna come in, I'm just gonna go ahead and use this one first, but I'm gonna use this as the shadow color here. So we'll do a little bit of shadow there and a little bit of shadow here. And then blend it together a little bit with my other lighter marker. And then this is just going to help me not have to do quite as much work with my blending with my pencils. And yeah, that is going to be how all of the marker work goes for these leaves. So again, just adding some marker to one side and then down to the other and then blend it, and that's pretty much all you got to do. Yep, so I'm gonna go and finish off all of the leaves. So that's gonna include all these ones down here and then any ones that are around flowers as well. And then all the stems will be just this G60, and I'm just gonna do just a solid color of that, solid layer of that color for the stems. And then we'll add some shading and stuff with pencils later on. So yeah, so I'm gonna head off and do all the leaves, and when we come back, I will work on the flowers with you guys. Okay, there's all the greenery done. I am gonna do a couple little bits that I've kind of skipped over here. So we're gonna do the beak on the little chick back here. I'm using Y2 for that. And then his hat is going to be the same color as her hair, which was YR10, if I believe. Yeah, that's it. So that's going to do, we're going to do the same thing for the hat here. Okay. And then the other thing that I do want to do, I'm going to use the same color that I did for the bunnies on this little mushroom person. I'm going to do that, their skin tone, that color. So that was Y120. And then for the mushrooms and this under part here of their little hat, I'm going to use E000. So it's a barely there color, but it's definitely something a little bit different than pink. So I'm going to use that on that one and then on all of the mushroom stems here. Okay. And then since we're going to have so much yellow up here, I do want to do maybe bring some of that bright yellow down into the mushrooms at the bottom here. So I think I'm going to use the Y2. Yeah, we'll do the Y2 on this one, these two over here. And then we'll use the YR2, which is a little more orangey on these ones. Trying to figure out what else I want to do. So I like her little bag here. I kind of want it to match her hat. I've already gotten rid of my tan. I need to get my tan back out. So I did her hat with the tan from my Inktense. So I'm going to just go ahead and do that again real quick. So there we go. And I'll activate that real quick. Okay, that's all done. I'm trying to think what I want to do for his little overalls here. I think I want them to be brown, so I'm going to go ahead and go with the same color that I did on the hair and this hat over here, and we'll do his overalls in that color. And then for the little panda's bag, I'm going to use the E220, no, not that one. I'm going to use Y120. It's just a light, nice light brown. And I can add like some little details on there with maybe some pencils or something. All right, so the last biggest thing we have to do with a base layer are the flowers. So I'm going to show you how we're going to do that next. Okay, so we're going to start with this flower here, and it's going to be the same for all the flowers all the way across. So for the center, I am doing a combination of 3 colors. So I'm going to do YR2, YR10, and YR91. And so we're going to start with a base layer of YR2. So it's this one. And I'm just going to go over the whole thing. And I know it looks crazy, but this is just giving me a layer to work on at first. So we're going to pop that one aside. Then I'm going to switch to YR10. And so on these sunflowers normally, you know, there's that outside edge is kind of darker where it touches the petals, and then this inside edge is really dark as well. So we're going to fill this one in a little bit more because the inside is just a little bit darker than the outside. And then I'm going to come in with the YR91, and this is a super dark brown. And just go around the edges and like pretty dark in a couple of spots. And then we're going to blend that as best we can with the initial color. And thankfully this is pretty good paper, so it's blending pretty well. Okay, so what I might do now is I feel like the outside is not quite dark enough, so I'm gonna bring in some more of this YR10, and I'm just gonna start kind of patting the color in instead of just doing straight color, because I just want that color to extend a little bit more. And then blend that together again with the YR2. And then in the darker area, kind of do the same thing, kind of pat that color, that darkest color around the outside edge, and then do the same thing with the YR10. And then blend that again with YR2, or yeah, YR2. So that's kind of what the end result is gonna mostly look like. And then I'm going to use my black pigment liner. And at the edges of where it's darkest, I'm gonna just start dotting. And kind of where I want that really dark shadow to be, I'm going to be dotting a bunch of little black dots in there. I'll hold this up close so you can kind of see what I'm talking about here in a second, but it's not, you know, it doesn't do a lot because it's not that much darker than the brown that I've already got on here, but it does do a little bit. So it kind of helps just darken up that spot. You can also do like little swirls, like with your black pigment liner, and I'll hold that up so you can see, but you can just barely see some of those dots on there. And then I'm also going to take my paint marker. So this is a Tooli Art paint pen from the yellow set. It's number 3, but you can do kind of any yellow paint pen would work, or a white paint pen if you have that too. We're just going to give it a little bit more definition, and I feel like my marker here was not quite as dark as I wanted it to be, so we're gonna darken it up a little bit more. That's the nice thing about markers, is you can just keep building on top of the layers. Just keep building and building and building until things get to the level that you want them to be at. So yeah, so that's what my centers are gonna look like, basically. Okay, and then for the petals, I'm using a combination of Y2, YR33, and YR5. So these are my 3. I'm going to start with the Y2, color in the whole petal. Then come in with a little bit of the YR33, especially along the edges and where that kind of center part is. So that's not a huge difference between those two, but it does give a little bit of a difference. And then with the YR5, I'm just barely getting some color, some of that color in there so that I can kind of blend everything together, so that I don't just have a flat petal. And so it's a little variegated, that's not the word, varied, I guess. So it's not the same petal over and over and over. So some of the petals are going to have a little more orange in them, some petals are going to have a little more yellow. It kind of all depends on how you do your shading. And you kind of want each petal to have like its own little personality, because that's kind of what makes the sunflowers so fun, is that each petal can be so different. So yeah, so that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to go around, color each of the centers the same way, use the same shading combination for each of the flowers as well. And yeah, and then when I get back, we'll move on to maybe some pencil shading. So head off, finish off your flowers, and I'm going to do the same, and I will talk to you again here in a second. Okay, so here are the flowers all done. I'm going to finish the centers off a little bit later. But again, it's the same thing where I was just using a black fine liner and a yellow paint pen. So I've got this other flower down here that I need to do real quick. So this flower here is going to be the same as these two flowers. I did use a little bit of a different combo. So I brought in the Y04 from my Copic markers. I'm just going to use that as a base here. And then I'm going to use the Y2 to add in some shading. I'll just do a little bit here and there so that I can blend out as I go. And I'll do this color combo all the way across the flower here. Okay, so that should be all of my alcohol marker work done. All of, yeah, any of the, like the water-based supplies that I was going to use. I think all of that's done. So now I just need to grab some pencils and get started with some shading. Okay, so today I think I'm going to be trying a few different kinds of pencils. First, I'm going to start off with my Shuttle Art pencils. Now, these aren't the best pencils in the world, but I feel like they're going to do okay on this paper. And this is just to darken up a couple of spots around the flower. I'm not going super detailed on this. This is just to help add some shading around here and there. But I'm going to use this color. So this is Ochre, which is number 25 from the Shuttle Art pencils. And I'm not sure which set this is, unfortunately. I think it's like 180 set maybe. But yeah, you can just, pretty much any Shuttle Art would probably work. I know that they have different, some of them have different barrels, so they're not all quite the same. But, so yeah, so I'm just going to use this color on definitely all of the orangey ones, flowers. Let me see if this will work on this one too. It might, if I use it. Yeah, that'll work too, there. Yeah, so this one pencil is just going to add some shading to all of the petals. So I'm going to go off screen, take care of that. And then I'm also, well, then I'll show you the next step when I come back. So I will be right back with you. Okay, next we're going to work on the leaves and stems. I'm going to zoom you in just a little bit so you can see what I'm working on. Work on this little section right here. So I've got my Shuttle Art number 148, which is kiwi green, and that's just going to give me a little bit of a shadow color. And so anywhere where there would be a little bit of shade, I'm going to go ahead and add that color in. So we're going to go like along the center lines of the leaves and then along the edge as well. So I'll show you again on this one along the center line just to darken that up. And then along this one edge. So that dark color will be everywhere. So the other thing that I wanted to do is I wanted to add some like browns and yellows to certain parts. I'm using Desert Yellow, which is 53, Light Orange Yellow, which is number 36, and then I have a green here too, just to kind of blend those in. It's light yellowish green, number 81. So I'm just going to add in a couple of spots here and there with those two colors. I think these are probably really close. Yeah, those are super close. So that'll just kind of blend it into the other color a little bit. And then what I would like to do is use like a brown. So this is number 74, and then just do tiny little dots. Now, I don't want to use a, I could very easily use like a paint marker or, what am I trying to say? A fine liner. One of those would probably work for doing this as well, but I didn't want to have it be like super bright. I wanted to be able to blend it into the leaf a little bit more so that it just has a little bit of a different look there. So it's not completely changed, but it just looks like maybe the leaf is, you know, getting towards the fall time, getting time towards the time when it would be changing and maybe, you know, I don't want to say dying, but that's what I mean. That's what I mean. All right, so yes, I'm going to do that for all of the leaves. So again, I'll just do this one here just so you guys can see. And since there's already dots on here from when I just went crazy with the splattering in the background, that's going to kind of help the look even more. Like it's not going to it's not going to be, you know, it's not going to look weird that I have these other dots on here now, because I'm kind of incorporating that into the quote-unquote design of the leaf. Yeah, and then these, like I said, these this yellow and this brown are super close in color, but you can use those to just kind of blend. Like this yellow blends it into that greenish yellow really good. Okay, and then I'm going to add in some more little dots, make some big, some little. Have some extend past where the color is to do a big one right there. I could also come in with the green too and add in a few dots with the green. That'll just give it some fun variation, and that way I don't have to, you know, worry about everything being so perfect or all my leaves looking exactly the same. I can make each leaf a little bit different. So yeah, so that's what I'm going to do for all the leaves, and stems are just going to have, you know, where things cross over it. You'll get a little bit of shadow, and then we'll blend that out with the lighter green into that underlying marker color. So there we go. That's what that's going to look like. And I'm going to head off screen, take care of all the leaves on the page. So all the ones up here, all the ones down here. Everything's going to get a nice coating of those colors, just the same color combo on everything. Even with the lighter ones down here, I'm going to use those same colors, just kind of be a little bit lighter with them. So yeah, I'm going to head off screen, take care of all the leaves, and I will be back with you guys here in a second. Okay, so we got the flowers done, the leaves done. I'm going to hold it up closer so you guys can see kind of what I've done with that there. I do like the way the leaves turned out. I think that turned out pretty cool. I might add some little grass strokes around at the bottom, but I'm not going to do that right now. So we're going to start working on this side of the characters here. So I have a few different colors. I've got, what did I grab here? I grabbed specific things for things, and I'm trying to figure out. Okay. For the little ducky character, on the beak, I'm going to use Desert Yellow. So that's number 53, and that's just to add some simple shadows to the beak. And then I'm going to use light orange yellow, which is number 36, to add some shadows to the feathers and of this little character. That'll work. Okay. I don't want to add like a whole bunch of fur strokes or feather strokes or anything on here. I just want to add some subtle shading. So yeah, I don't want to do too much. I am going to add little lashes like you had on this side though. Okay. Yeah, and then maybe just a few right around here. And then just barely kind of adding some here and there. All right, and then I'm going to use this same color that I just used on the beak for a little bit of shadow color where things like overlap. I feel like that's done. I feel like, now let me do this first. So I've grabbed the dark coffee, which is number 60, to do a shadow color on the hat here. Okay, that's a little bit of shadow there, and then I'm going to use my cream color, Prismacolor, and add in some highlights there. I feel like I need to add some on the beak too, but I feel like maybe that should be done with the white Posca. So we're going to do a little bit here. Yeah, that'll work. I'm going to use my black fine liner to darken up the eyes. Okay, and then the last thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to add a little bit of pink around the cheeks, because you guys know that I can't help that. It's just like a thing I have to do with all these Lulu Mayo pages. It's just too cute not to do it. All right, I think that that is good for the little duck. I was going to try to do just tiny little flicks. Yeah, So with this same yellow paint marker that I was using to do the dots on the little sunflowers, I'm going to do that around a few places on the little chick. Okay. Okay, he's done. Let's do these little guys down here. So I've got a couple of different colors. I'm not sure exactly how I want to do this one yet. So I have ginger yellow, I have cinnamon, and I have brown olives. We're going to start with the cinnamon and see what happens. And that's for these little bunny guys down here, because I want them still to be very light. I don't want them to be darker. So I'm just barely touching the page here. And then I'm using the pale yellow, which is number 158. To try to blend that out a little bit. It doesn't really blend a whole lot. All right, so I'm going to try the cream color then to blend that, because I don't want the, I think that'll work. I just want a little bit of shadows around the edges. Yeah, I think that'll work. And then we'll do a little bit of pink cheek there. And again, use the cream to kind of tone that down. I'm going to hold off on the ghost because I want the ghost to color together. Sorry, I didn't zoom in on this one. So I'll zoom in on this one so you guys can see what I was doing for the little bunny there. So really simply just using the cinnamon super, super lightly anywhere where there should be a little bit of a shadow or to help emphasize the outline of the character. Adding a little bit of the brown. Since this dress is going to overlap, we'll add some shadow there. So yeah, just barely touching the pencil to paper. I'm going to try to blend that out a little bit with the pale yellow. All right, let's say, yeah, we're going to go this way. So this flower is going to create a shadow this way. And this one will create one there. Okay, and then I'm going to use my cream color to try to tone that down a little bit so that it blends in and it's just a real subtle shadowing effect. And then I'll add in some pink for the cheeks. I'm using Peach Puff number 26 for that. And then I'm just going to blend that out with the cream to try to mute it a little bit. There we go. And then I'm just going to darken up the eyes for both the bunnies there. All right, and then this character here, we're going to work on her. And then, like I said, the ghosts, these two ghosts I'm going to wait on. So we're going to work on this one next. Okay, I'm going to start with this number 78. This is the light ochre. And just do a little bit of a shadow right around the edges of the face. Okay, and just as a reminder, I'm using super, super light pressure. I'm also going to give her eyelashes because I feel like these other characters have eyelashes and she's the only one that doesn't. So we're going to give them eyelashes. There we go. Okay. Let's do some pink cheeks. I'm going to use this shallow orange to try to tone that down a little bit and blend out the shadow color that I used. Tone it down just a little bit more with my cream. Using light brownish gray, which is number 82, to add a little bit of a shadow on the eyeball there. Need to do that on the duck too, I forgot. Okay, there's that. Let's darken up the pupil. And then on their outfit, I have a couple of colors here. I'm hoping these ones work. So I have Brick Red, which is number 73, the Peach Puff, which is number 26, and we might use a little bit of this shallow orange as well. Maybe some of the pale yellow too. Okay, so I'm going to start with the Brick Red. Again, using super light pressure. Okay, use the Brick Red. Now I'm using the Peach Puff. What is it called? Yeah, Peach Puff. to try to blend that out a little bit so it meshes with my base layer. I'm going to go ahead and use the shallow orange to do a little bit of color on here. And add a little bit of pink. Cool. All right, and then I'm going to do a little bit of the peach and the shallow orange on the circles here. Yep, and then the same color combo is going to be done on this dress here, and her little collar is going to get a little bit of that, these two lighter pinks, so the shallow orange and the peach buff will go on her collar as well. So I'm going to take care of that real quick, and then we will move on to the next step. All right, and the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to darken up just the lash line because I feel like it is not quite dark enough, so we're going to darken that up just a tad. Okay. All right, she's done. All right, so now we will move on to, let's do these little mushrooms down here. I'm gonna use ginger yellow, so that's number 31. Just barely adding some shading to that. That blends almost perfectly into there. And then we do need a little bit of a gray, so let's use this light brownish gray, which is number 82. Do a little bit of that on the mushrooms. And then we'll come in with the cream for that. There we go. Okay, let's zoom out and take a look. Okay, so really all we have left are these three characters, this little ghost, and these mushrooms. So that'll be our next steps. Okay, so we're gonna move on to these next steps. I am gonna do one thing really quick back on this little guy. I'm gonna zoom you back in. And on the parts of the outfit, I'm going to add a little bit of this light orange yellow. So that's number 36. And that's just going to kind of warm up the outfit a little bit so it's not so pinky. Like I want everything to be kind of like that with that orangish yellow tint. So this will help bring that color back into the outfit a little bit. I think that should be good. I'm gonna just use my cream to try to blend it together a little. Okay, I think that'll work. Maybe add a little bit of yellow to the outside edges of her mushroom hat. That'd be okay. Maybe a little bit in some of these circles on her hat. Yeah, I think that's cool. Okay. Over here on this character. So we're going to use for her hat, I've got, I think this was the right color, ginger yellow. So this is number 31. And again, just adding a little bit of shading, super basic shading to all of these elements. And since we have that base color underneath, it really helps. It just kind of makes everything pop. And if I want to darken things up, I can. So I've got a little bit of this dark coffee. I'm just going to use a tiny little bit of that in this corner and then blend it back out with the, there we go, with the ginger yellow. Just to darken things up a little bit, because that would be a really dark area of the hat right there. Okay, I'm going to continue to use this color all over the hat here. Blend that together a little bit with the cream. Okay, and then the bow on her hat is, I'm going to use a glitter gel pen, I think, for that part. And then her hair and skin, let's do that next. So for her skin, I think it's these two. I think that's what I had said. I believe that's right. So I'm going to start with I'm going to start with this one. I'm going to start with the cinnamon. And again, super simple shading. So right along the hairline and then along the chin here. Right above the nose. We are going to do a little bit underneath the eye. Just a little under there. And a little under that one, and then I'm going to be a little bit more generous along the top part of the eye. Yeah, and then I'll do her hands and her legs with the same color. And then I'm going to use the light ochre to darken some of that up a little. We're going to use some of this. No, we're going to use this one and see what this does. We're going to use some of the shallow orange. This is 167. And that just doesn't do a lot. Changes the tone a little bit, but there's not a lot of blending that happens on this with these pencils. These are not super great blending pencils. They're okay. They're just not great. Okay. All right, I found another brown that might work. So this is 108. This is apricot brown. I'm just trying to get a better transition from the skin to the shadowed areas. And again, just a reminder, you don't have to use the same colors I use. So whatever works best for you, like whatever you can get to blend and look nice, use that. And again, I'm going to try to use the cream right over top of that so that it... Yeah, I just don't like the chin right there. That's what's throwing me, I think. Okay, this is frustrating me, so I'm going to erase. And I'm going to try to do it with my Prismas because that is really upsetting me. I was trying to stick to the shuttle art, but you know, if something's not working for you, it's okay to try to erase it and start again. So I'm going to grab my Prismas really quick. Okay, I actually grabbed a couple of Polychromos because I have those right off the side here. So I'm using burnt sienna and burnt ochre, right? Those are the two, yeah. So again, just going through with the burnt sienna first and trying to get that shadow color in, and then I'm going to blend it out. Oh, that's much better. I just think that the color maybe wasn't matching quite right. So yeah, just remember that you can always erase it and start again. Like you're not, as long as you're not like super heavy handed with the color. And even if there's a little bit of the color left over, it's okay. Just try again. Now, a couple years ago, I might have completely freaked out and said I've ruined this page and stopped. But today, I am going to persevere here. This might also be just, you know, a way to see that, yes, these are better pencils overall. Okay, very lightly with the burnt sienna there, and then just blend that out. All right, and I'm going to add the burnt sienna back along the top part of her eye. Ah, that's much better. Okay, yeah, so I'm going to fix the colors on her hands and legs too, and then I'm going to try to use actually this burnt sienna again right over top of the pink here. That's not quite the right pink, but I should be able to tint it with the burnt sienna. Okay, so yeah, I'm going to fix her hands and legs, and then I will be back with you guys. Okay, next we're going to work on her hair, and I'm using the dark coffee and some of the cream color to do this. So I'm just going to add in the shadow color where I need to add it. Okay, and then this section of her hair here that kind of goes outward, that'll be kind of in a little bit of a highlighted area. So I'm not going to add this dark color into that. Super technical. I'm just, again, adding some pretty simple shading to parts here and there. And then, you know, if I get things where I'm not supposed to have them, I can kind of fix it a little bit. All right, and then we'll take cream. And like I said, I can kind of, there we go. All right, I'm going to darken up her eyes here. Okay, for her socks down here, I'm going to use a little bit of this shallow orange. And then I'm going to blend that out a little bit with my cream. so her bag is going to be the same kind of coloring that I did on her hat. I think I just used the ginger yellow, I believe. Do need to darken that up a little bit with the dark coffee, just to add in some of the shadow colors there. Her dress is my next one. So I think I'm going to use the light orange yellow, so that's number 36, to add, yeah, I think that'll work. I don't know, I don't feel like that's quite dark enough. But again, I can use the dark coffee to add just a little bit extra shadow to the edges there, and like anywhere where there would be extra shadow, so like under the armpit here. And okay, so I'm just going to use this yellow and just kind of go around the edges of her dress and anywhere where there would be a shadow, or you know, arms are overlapped or things like that, and just add a little bit of shading to that. Okay, and then in the darker areas, like I did before, just going to add a little bit extra with the dark coffee, and then blend it out a little bit with the yellow color. So specifically here too, where the purse kind of overlaps. Yeah, I'm not going to do too much with that because I don't really want to mess with that a whole lot. I am going to add in a little bit of the shallow orange and the cream to the hearts and the cuffs of her dress and the collar here. Kind of do the same thing on the hearts, but just add a little, I think maybe just the, no, yeah, I'm going to do the shallow orange and the cream on the hearts as well. So yeah, I will do that real quick and I'll be right back with you. Okay, I got these little mushrooms down here, which I will do with the apricot yellow. Yeah, that'll work. And then kind of the same thing I did last time, a little bit of gray for some shadow, and then I'll use the cream color. All right, I think she's pretty much done. I think she turned out really cute. Okay, and then we'll move on to this cute little guy down here. I'm going to start with the light ochre and see if this is the right color, and I think it is. Cool. All right, and so for him, I am going to try to add in a few little fur strokes, but just where Lulu's already drawn them in. So I'm not adding anything else really crazy to this. I'm just kind of following the pattern that Lulu has already laid out here. Okay, and then for his little hands, the ones that I've seen have had darker hands. So I'm going to start with a layer of the, what is this one again? Sorry, light ochre. And then I'm going to go over top of that with a light layer of the dark coffee. Okay, and then I'm going to add in some strokes here to the tail. Let me bring out that burnt ochre again from my Polychromos and just kind of come through into the white areas. And we're going to add a little bit of color here, but then I'm also just going to add tiny little fur strokes into the white. Oops, I forgot to do that on his hand. Yep, and then a little bit up this way with the... That little guy's so cute. I love him. All right. I do need to try to get some of his eye back. There we go. Looking a little red there. His pants, no, his shirt. Let's do his shirt first. Again, with that combination of the shallow orange and my cream to create like a creamy peachy color. And then also coming in with the dark coffee to add shading anywhere where it needs it, like where the cross or the strap crosses the body here. And then I'm going to use the dark coffee for his little pants here. This is such an adorable page. I love it. Yeah, so for this, I'm just going anything that overlaps or along the outside edge, I'm adding just a little light layer of color. I'll do a little bit here. Yeah, I think that's good. Darken up that shadow there, darken up some shadow here, and a little bit. Man, that little guy's so cute. Do the same thing with his eyes that I've done on the other ones. So the grays, and then use the black fine liner to darken up the irises. All right, couple last things I need to do. I need to do the ghosts. I'm going to add a color to her hat here, and then I'm going to outline these little dots and hearts with white. But I need to, let's do the ghosts first. So I'm just going to take a couple of colors that I have sitting around here. So we're going to go with desert yellow, shallow orange, and the cream. I'm going to start very, very lightly with the desert yellow. We're going to do kind of an outline almost all the way around. And I'm barely touching the page here, just barely touching. Okay, and then I'm going to take the the shallow orange, sorry, and add a little bit of an outline inside of that color that I put down. Maybe we'll bring in some pink, just really lightly, barely touching. I don't want it to be super pink. I do want cheeks though. Okay, and then I'm going to use my, let's do a little bit of pale yellow in a couple of spots. And then I'm going to use the cream. There we go. I'm going to do the same thing on this other little ghost. All right, I have an old gel pen that I'm going to use. It's like a goldy orange color, so it's the AEN Art. I'm not sure. There's not actually a color number, but it's like a orangey yellow kind of gel pen, and I'm going to do that across for her hat band. Okay, I'm also going to use my white Posca now, and we're going to outline the little circles and hearts on the little Mushroom Girl's hat and Lulu's dress. Okay, last little bits I'm going to do are, I'm going to add a little bit of extra dots to the characters with whites already in their eyes. So I'm going to just add just a couple more little dots on a couple of them. Okay. And then I'm going to also use that same gel pen that I used on her hat for the little things popping out of the flower here. Okay, I might want to add just a few more little highlights to some of like the petal edges, but that's just going to be just me like barely touching the paper with my Posca, and I'll just do a little bit of highlights around the page on some of the leaves, on some of the petals of the flowers, but it's just like barely, like I'm just running the tip of the Posca pen over the paper, like just barely touching. I'm trying to see if I want to do any on the flower petals. I think I want to do a few petals. Not all of them, but just a few. Okay, I think that's it. So there is my final page. I really enjoyed coloring this. I think it turned out really cute. I like the mesh of colors in there, like the pink kind of, I made sure, you know, to add in the yellow to the pink here so that it really does kind of blend with all of the other yellows and oranges and yellowy greens that we have. But I'll hold it up closer so you guys can see. Like I said, just really, I love this book. I think it's so cute. And I could color in it all day, every day, pretty much. So actually, sorry, one more thing. I'm going to take the dark yellowish green and just add a few little grass strands. Just kind of around places. It doesn't have to be anything fancy, but I just wanted to kind of have a few in there. Okay, that's done. All right, here, so that you can kind of see what I did. Just tiny little grass strands. All right, so that is it. Thank you guys so much for being here. I appreciate you watching this with me. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.